What's going on today, guys? I am doing a quick review of the Raptor that I've been saying for probably a month now that I'm going to get to doing. And I'm down here doing some work at my mom's where I keep the Raptor, so I figured now would be better time than any. And I also last weekend cleaned and polished it using this new cleaner I had been using. So I'll talk to you guys real quick. Anyway, this is a 2005 Raptor 350 SE. What makes it an SE is, I think, the color, and it's a 6-speed. So it's 1 down, 5 up with reverse. And there's a little reverse shifter right there. Forward and reverse. This Raptor, I purchased it in 2010 or 11. Barely ridden. It was like brand new. Matter of fact, it still has the original tires on it, but this thing was like brand new. I know it looks like brand new now, but this thing has been ridden. I promise you, it has been ridden. Anyway, this is probably one of the best machines I've ever owned, next to my Honda 400EX. It's never, ever left me stranded anywhere. I wish it had an odometer to tell me how many miles it has on there, because we go to Tall Pines all the time, and this thing has made it to every single trip to Tall Pines we've ever gone on. I can't even tell you how many trips that is. It's a lot. Since I've owned it, I have replaced, the rear carrier bearings were just done. I had a buddy do those. Those were recently done, and they were that's the second time since I've owned the machine that those rear carrier bearings were done. First time since I've owned it that the swing arm bushings, which are right in here, swing arm bolt pops out and the bushings slide in, were done. And then the carrier bearing is obviously right there, and that's where that was replaced. It does need a new rear shock back there, but unfortunately I've looked all over high and low, short of calling, parts companies out of the country, or out of the state. I have not been able to find a new rear shock. It sits real low in the rear end. That's the only negative. Like I said, it's been ridden very hard, frequent oil changes. One thing I've learned about machines, I've learned from a friend of mine, is big issue with all machines, not only four-wheelers, dirt bikes, any type of machine. People don't do the basic maintenance, which includes oil filter replacement and air filter replacement frequently. So I can't stress this enough. And I've told you with the CF motos just how important it is to change out your stock air filter. Not only is it important to change out your stock air filter, it's important to keep it clean. And that goes for any air filter, really, on anything, including your car, truck. Your air filter supplies clean air to your machine. Without it, your machine cannot breathe. So, believe it or not, this air filter was new not long ago. You can kind of still see the original blue color and the Moose Racing on it. This air filter is less than $20. I usually just buy it brand new and replace it. This air filter comes pre-oiled and it comes sticky. Yes, this air filter does look pretty nasty and pretty grody, but it does still have some life left in it because I just had it out and inspected it from the inside. So it's going to be ready to go soon. It's probably next year. It's going to be replaced. Probably got at least another season on it. It's not that dirty yet. It looks pretty bad though, because it's a lot of dust. With the CF motos, as I mentioned, dust getting through your stock air filter, which is a paper filter, is a big deal. When that dust gets in your filter and it gets sucked into the intake boot, and then it gets down into the carburetor, which on this thing it's obviously carbureted. On the CF motos it's not. So it gets down into your carburetor, and it can cause damage, dirt, and junk in your carb. On a non-carbureted engine, it gets worked its way right in the top end, and it causes premature valve wearing, just a bunch of top end issues. Valve seats or valve seals can go bad. Anyway, I digress pretty far here. Just wanted to take an opportunity to tell you about that. So back to the Raptor here. So what recently was done with this thing that's still kind of worked out right now is other than the rear carrier bearings, the swing arm bushings, we also replaced the stator, which is behind this cover right here. I can tell you right now, if you're curious, it did not require a flywheel tool to pull. You were able to essentially unbolt the cover, slide the stator assembly out, and put a new one in there. It was a little bit on the tricky side because after we put it all together, the seal didn't quite go where we wanted it to go, and it required us to use, as you can see, a little RTB, and you can still see it allows a little bit of oil pass through. At one point, judging from the staining on the engine, you can see it was allowing a lot of oil pass through. And because I stringently tell my nephew, who I pass his four-wheeler to, check the oil every time you ride, he came to the conclusion and realized, hey, this thing's leaking oil. And we were able to get it patched up. So it does still pass a little oil through, but not a lot. So just be aware, if you replace a stator on this or on any similar Yamaha, the seal that they give you with your new stator doesn't quite seal as well. So maybe plan on putting a little RTB on the outside. Again, I stress the outside, because if you get RTB on the inside and that RTB gets in the stator housing, and in the stator, it's an oiled stator, it's going to cause some funky stuff to happen. So you don't want RTB on the inside. I have never replaced the front brakes on this machine, and they're still pretty darn good, and they're the only brakes I use. The rears were shot. They have brand new pads on there now, so they're good to go. When I had the rear bearings done, I had the pads done. Pretty much, essentially, like a completely brand new machine again. Runs great. It does smoke when it's cold, and you got to choke it to start it. It will smoke a lot of smoke. Usually starts up on the first revolution, but there has been a carb draining issue. As you can see, a little bit of fuel down here because the fuel's been on. So sometimes the float on the carburetor will stick, and it won't like to start until I drain it. Not really sure what kind of condition she's in right now. I haven't started it in weeks, judging from the fact that it's still clean. I don't think my nephew started it in a while either. So as far as reliability, like I said, the only reliability running issue I've had where it actually just would not start and I couldn't figure it out until I finally got out the electrical tester and had a buddy come over was the stator's bad. That was a shot in the dark. So we actually replaced the stator, and I think it was a voltage regulator. But once the stator was in, we started it, fired right up. So stator, and then there was an issue with the switch here, and on these Yamahas, I'm not quite sure why or how, but on the bottom down here, you can barely see it right there, there was a hole. And what happened was dirt and dust worked its way into that hole, and it got between the kill switch here, and it actually ground the kill switch out, so the machine would not stop running, or the machine would not start because it said the kill switch was on. That took a little while to figure out, but when I figured it out, I took it all apart and cleaned it. So when I recently had this problem with it not wanting to start, the first thing I did was take the kill switch completely apart, cleaned it, lubricated it, contact grease, put it all back together. I know that thing's good to go now. So that was one issue I had, and then the stator. That's the only 2 times this machine would not start. The switch happened on the trail. Well, actually happened at camp. We did end up figuring it out and fixing it there and continued to ride it. Stator happened at home. She's been sitting a little more than she's used to, so certain things are starting to kind of go on her. Valve seals are shot. It does smoke when it's cold. Once it's warmed, it's completely fine. But other than that, it doesn't really burn any oil. I do change the oil regularly, do change the air filters regularly, spark plugs, things like that. Still got the original tires on it. It did come with an aftermarket front and rear bumper. Came with aftermarket Nerf bars already done. The bumper has been used, as you can see. All in all, machine reliability wise, it's a great machine. I love it. I would highly recommend it. It doesn't matter if you're a small person or a big person. You could put somebody who's new to sport quads, who may not be the best rider on these machines, or the most reliable rider, and because of the fact that it's not such a big, heavy machine, they're comfortable. So I highly recommend it in that sense. And then if you are good at riding sport quads and you enjoy the power and the quickness, it's a machine that you will have fun on. It's not gonna, peel your face off speed, but it will move you fast enough to have a great time. I've raced DS650, Bombardier DS650, smoked it. I've raced a lot of different vehicles and either kept up or smoked them, so I know this thing is pretty quick. Also, believe it or not, even speaking about that top speed and stuff, I did swap out the front sprocket on these machines. If you're looking for maybe a little bit lower end torque or a little bit of top end speed, you can change out the toothing on your sprockets. I did that because I think I went from a 15 to a 14. But what I wanted was a little bit more torque on the low end. I wanted to be able to enjoy the trail a little bit more. And since we do a lot of trail riding, I wanted to be able to get out of the hole and then rock it forward. So I changed the sprocketing on the tooth, which you can just unbolt the sprocket and replace it whenever you want to. And you can replace it with any number tooth that you want to, depending on what you want the machine to do. So I actually slowed the machine down. The other thing I did was I did pull out the baffle. As you can see, there was just a hole right there. Bolt went through, and I pulled the baffle right out because it was rattling, making a whole ton of noise, driving me crazy. Pulled the baffle right out. I got a little bit louder, on the louder side. So I will see if I can get this thing running real quick and do a quick video of it, let you hear it. And then I guess we'll wrap it up. I mean, there's really not much I can talk about with this machine. I mean, this thing's definitely got thousands of miles on it. It's been to Tall Pines, I would say at least a dozen or close to a dozen times. And every time it goes, it's ridden, and it's ridden hard. And it's just a reliable machine. Reliable machine. Let me see if I can get it started here. Hang on. Man, it literally fired up immediately. And I wish I wouldn't have paused this, but I couldn't find the key. So I paused it, and I put the key in, I hit it, and it fired right up. Anyway, I wish I wouldn't have done that. You guys just have to take my word for it. Fired right up on the first revolution. No choke. As you can see, no choke. It's not smoking at all. If I choke it, it smokes a little bit. I've ran 87 octane in this thing for years. Sometimes I do throw some 90 recreational, which is ethanol free in it. She likes that, but as you can hear, it runs good here by the motor. Literally has absolutely no noise at all. Just a great running four-wheeler. I highly recommend it. I've even actually gotten the gas off right now. and it fired right up and it's running, which I will tell you is a good thing to do. Let me shut this off. Shutting your fuel off is definitely something good to do, especially on older machines, because unfortunately what ends up happening is, well, number one, you can cause a hydro lock, because if your carburetor fills with fuel, it doesn't want to start. And then if you get it started, it could hydro lock. But if you leave the fuel on, what happens is when the carburetor gets older, and then this is the problem that this machine has, the fuel will still hold in the carburetor, and then what it does is it fills up the float in the bottom end of the carburetor. And if you're running fuel with ethanol in it, it gums up that float in the bottom end of the carburetor, and then the float gets stuck, and it gets stuck in the upward position. And then what you have to do is you got to drain that gas out of the float, out of the bottom, and then you got to tap on the bottom of the carburetor to get that float to drop. Get it unstuck, and then that's where you'll see, like you can see there was gas down here, and that was leaking prior because the fuel was on, so I think I didn't have the screw tight, and that's probably why it started on the first keystroke. Usually I have to drain the carburetor with that screw there if the gas wasn't shut off, and you know, obviously whoever used it last time, the gas was on. I shut it off when I got here. So anyway, just a simple word of advice, you know, on an older machine that you've been riding hard, shut the fuel off. Let the machine run for a minute. When you start hearing it choke out, shut it off. Especially if you're running ethanol gas. I'm not going to sit here and tell you to run 90 octane if you don't want to. Should you? Yeah, run ethanol free? Absolutely. But you know what? Sometimes you're in a position where you want to ride, you don't have it. Well, you're not going to kill it running octane, running low octane, regardless of what people say, unless it's specifically tuned for it. You might get some more valve train noise, but anyway, that's the 2005 Yamaha Raptor 350 Special Edition 6-speed with reverse, stock tires, all original except for the aftermarket Nerf bars. I can't even estimate the mileage. I've been riding this thing myself since 2010. At the time I was about 200 pounds. So keeps going up and up on the wear. Now my nephew's on it. So that's it. Thanks, guys.